Dave 2D tried this keyboard and he almost gave up.
Yeah, but it could have been so much easier.
Hi, so the other day both of us watched a Dave 2D video where he tried the Planck and he shared his struggle and his ergonomic journey, and we started talking about that. And then we thought, hey, why don't we record that conversation and share it with you? So we're gonna have that. This is Luis, our CEO, and Miquel, head of marketing.
Okay, so let's describe his struggle or his journey. How would you put it into words?
Yeah, I would think his starting point was curious. He chose the keyboard because of aesthetics. He saw a Reddit post and he was visually attracted to the keyboard and he bought it. And then, his struggle began with, started typing and realized that he was super slow. He usually is like almost 100 words per minute, and then he wasn't able to do more than 20 words per minute.
Okay, so he went from a regular staggered keyboard to a ortho keyboard, basically.
Yes,
directly.
And to an ortho keyboard that was without number rows, and with a special thumb cluster, I would say, or a special thumb spacebar where he doesn't have a normal spacebar. So he really was struggling with that, and he shared his journey. And his struggle was mostly to speed. He wasn't able to type.
To adapt to the layout. Okay.
Exactly. And he tried a lot of things.
Okay.
To adapt. Those were changing the keycaps, looking for a low profile version of the keyboard, trying to put legends on the keycaps because his keycaps didn't have legends, trying to properly type, and he wasn't able. He was just so frustrated.
Okay. So what you're describing seems like he was interested on the aesthetics and probably he knew about the ergonomic benefits of columnar layouts, or in this case the ortho layout, and he jumped into it directly without really testing the waters, right? So it seems like he started at a, let's say, difficult point, right? Because he went from a regular staggered keyboard to this. Okay, so it's difficult because, well, no legends, no number row, and also it's the ortholinear layout and no thumb keys, right? Why would you say it's not so beneficial from the ergonomic side?
Our fingers are supposed to move this way, so that's good. That's why ortholinear is good, because our fingers are moved this way naturally and not like that. But that's the only real ergonomic benefit of that keyboard. That's why, for example, being split is much more important, because your wrists are positioned naturally.
Okay, I will argue that there's another ergo benefit, although it's not considered usually ergonomic. Like, you have a configurable software where you can program multiple layers and set it up how you want, because that can allow you to reduce some movements that are not as good, like movement with the pinky and so on, right? So I would say that that's a feature too, but all ergo keyboards that are not the mainstream Logitech whatever have this feature, right?
Yeah, and he doesn't have a number row, so he's forced to not reach to that row.
Yeah,
so that's
he needs layers. Yes, he needs layers. Yeah. The reason why it's not the best point to start, or not as good from the ergonomic standpoint, is it's not split, right? So let's touch on that point first. So what happens when a keyboard is not split? So if I'm gonna type, like I'm kind of forced to put my elbows close to my body, right? Because if not, if I'm opening my elbows, then my hands are rotating, right? And then there's not much sense on the ortholinear layout, right? So then I have to do like this, so I'm closing my shoulders, and that's not great from the ergonomic standpoint, and also I'm kind of hunching a little bit, right? So if you want to open your chest, then inevitably you're gonna be open on your elbows, and then your fingers are gonna be on kind of on diagonal, right? So maybe we can show with a columnar keyboard that is split.
Or you start like this, and then you start moving it out.
Yeah, and also if it's together, you can rotate it.
You can rotate it to adapt to that position.
Yeah,
so that way now my fingers can move in the natural way.
Yeah. So in the video, Dave mentioned that keyboard should have been this way, and I kind of agree with him. But for that, probably they should have been kind of angled from the center, so it's aligned with our forearms and our hands, right?
Yeah,
so,
I think there's a keyboard like that. I think the expose is together, but it's columnar, and it's like that.
Yeah, so that would be closer to this, let's say, regular layout, or how it should have been. Okay, so we were talking about the split, right? How the split allows you to be more comfortable.
Naturally.
Yeah. Okay, next thing, thumb keys. So this has more thumb keys than a regular keyboard, right? Because you're hitting the spacebar here, and then you have more keys in this area. So that's nice. But it's not like our thumbs, and the way the thumbs move, they collide, basically, right? So it's not taking advantage of that either.
Yeah, here you can see how if we try to put this keyboard together, the thumb keys hit.
Yeah.
So that's the radius that your thumbs kind of use.
Yeah.
And this is something that is important because he needed layers when he was doing using the keyboard, because he needed to access the number row. And then if you don't have thumb keys, it's less comfortable to reach, to use layers than when you have thumb keys.
Yeah. Although probably you can have a very minimal layout setup where you don't need that many keys. So that could be okay.
Yeah, he could use 1 or 2 extra layers and that would be enough.
Yeah. Okay, and the next ergonomic thing is the column stagger, right? So, for example, we can see that there's column stagger, and that's basically because if you move your fingers, right, they're not at the same height all the time.
Yeah,
right?
Basically, if you look at your hand, your fingers are not the same height, right? So the kind of column staggers tries to follow that a little bit. So when you rest your hands, your fingers rest naturally. You don't need to move your pinky up, like you would have in that keyboard.
Okay, so it seems we're trying to kind of flame or something like this decision, but we are not. That's not our intention. Our intention is trying to explain that there's an easier way to start this ergonomic journey, and this is what we call the ergonomic journey. And it's like every person that is interested in or improving their performance or their health or their comfort, even they go into this journey where they start using this ergonomic. This could be keyboards or mice or chair or whatever, right? So in this case, Dave 2D is like a, let's say, a mainstream personality in the sense of in the tech world, right? But his approach was very personal, very like he likes the aesthetic of this keyboard, so he's gonna give it a shot, and he brute forces through all the, let's say, inconvenience, right? Until on the other side, he has accomplished using it.
Yeah, one of the things that we said a lot was like, I don't know if this is a saying in English, but he started the house
by the roof
or at the roof instead of the foundation.
Yeah.
And he went for the most difficult, which is learning a new layout. Going from staggered to columnar, I think is one of the most difficult bits of the ergonomic journey of learning ergo keyboards, going to columnar from the conventional row stagger keyboard like the Dygma race. That's the most difficult bit, switching to columnar. He did the most difficult thing and got the least ergonomic things in return, like we've just been talking about that.
No split, no extra thumb keys in a comfortable setup, and also no column stagger.
Yeah, so he didn't get he put a lot of effort in, and he got some benefits, but not all of them.
Okay, but what he got back? So this is a much smaller keyboard than any of this, right? The footprint is much smaller, right? And aesthetically pleasing, that's subjective, right? So for him, he prefers this form factor, and I could understand it. The symmetry, right? And that's nice. Also, he picked these keycaps that were flat and rounded. I would say that's more difficult because there's less surface area to type. But again, he really enjoyed it, so that's totally fine.
And they had no legends.
No legends, exactly. Anyway, but you can see here that
legends. Yeah.
We're used to using keywords with no legends, so eventually you get used to it. But okay, so that was his, let's say, specifications, what he wanted to, or what he had to, how would you say it?
Yeah, what drew him into that
exactly
was that aesthetically pleasing, this appeal.
Okay, so let's create a different scenario. Okay, what would we recommend to someone that wants to get into the ergonomic journey, trying to reduce this, let's say, friction or making it easier? What do you think? What should be the starting point?
Yeah, for me, if it would be different if I would recommend something to Dave. That would what I would recommend to someone regular Joe.
Okay, actually, let's start there. What would you recommend to Dave?
Yeah, so Dave was really attracted by this keyboard and the form factor and the no legends. It was really pleasing, and I can see the appeal that that keyboard had. So I would recommend him to find an ortholinear keyboard, not a column stagger, an ortholinear split keyboard.
Okay, so for you, the split is the critical part here.
Yeah, for me, it's the split. Like if you are gonna go to the travel of learning a new layout, go for split. And there's two reasons for this. One is because the split is better, and as we showed, split for me
is better for your chest, better for your back, for your neck, for your wrists.
For me, you say choose one ergonomic feature. You only can have one. I would say split.
Okay.
I don't need. I don't need. I love programmable, but if I'm gonna choose one, split.
No, I understand it. I agree with you. Is the most important probably.
So I would say, okay, look for a keyboard that has kind of still ortholinear, doesn't have number row maybe, but it's split.
But most of these keyboards are custom builds, so it's not like there's an easy option commercial build that it's just like the Planck but split.
Yeah, you cannot just go and buy it. For the Planck, I think he bought a bare bones version where he just had to put the switches and the keycaps. For split keyboards, this is more complicated. It's more difficult to source all the different components. You cannot just go to the shop and buy it, or go to Best Buy and buy it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so
but maybe your approach to Dave would be different.
Okay, for sure I would recommend split, but there's something that, if I recall properly, he said that he tried to touch type and he couldn't, and he went back to his way of typing. I would heavily recommend learning touch type. I'm not sure what was his process. What we recommend usually is like you start doing a little bit every day, and then in a few weeks you're ready. If you're more the kind of person that just goes ham and just wants to do it for 8 hours straight, you can do it too, but then the frustration is gonna be higher. So why would I recommend this? So when you learn how to touch type, then it's kind of like a new world opens where you can better use all the features of the customizable layers, the thumb keys, etc. Right? And also something something unexpected that happens is that you develop a new way of typing. So you type with regular keyboards in a way, and then you type with ergonomic keyboards in another way. And that's actually useful, although it may sound opposite, because you go to a laptop, to a random keyboard, to whoever's place you're going, and you're using a computer, then you have that typing technique. And then in the ergonomic keyboards, you have the other typing technique that it's more efficient. So you will type faster because it's more efficient. So in my case, I'm not a fast typist, but I was typing, let's say, 55 words per minute in my regular way of typing with laptops, regular keyboards and so on. And then when I went into touch typing, not even trying to be fast, I went to 80, 90 words per minute, right? So I would say, okay, stick to it, give it a shot, and don't despair. It will take a little bit of time, but then it will be so much easier, right? So for me, the split and actually touch typing would have been really important. And if he's able to use a split keyboard and touch type, then he's ready for everything. He will be able to use column stagger, low profile, MX switches, wherever he wants to do. So probably for me, these two things.
Yeah, that reminded me of something. That's the other reason that I would have gone for a split ortholinear keyboard, is because if he learns to use ortholinear keyboards in a keyboard like this, he is gonna develop some tricks and some bad habits, like probably touching B with the wrong finger or something like that.
On fingers and so on. Yeah.
So if you actually split the keyboard, you cannot learn those bad habits, because the keyboard, there's no key there, right? And you go press it and it's not there, and that way he will directly go to a better typing technique, which connects with this touch typing that you mentioned.
Yeah, but maybe something that we could approach in the other ways, like learning how to use a split keyboard is more difficult than learning how to use a single piece keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Because these habits of crossing your hands and so on, you need to rewrite them, right? So probably it's easier to learn how to use a Planck than learning how to use a split Planck.
Yes.
Right. So that would be something to consider. But if you're learning touch typing, it doesn't matter if it's split or attached, or if it's only a single piece, right? So once you split it and you make the decision of going for touch typing, then it doesn't matter which one you do.
That's maybe one of the reasons why, for a normal person, I wouldn't recommend going for split columnar. If my first ergonomic step would be going for a split staggered keyboard, like the Dygma Race, for example.
Race, yeah.
Because that way you don't change so many things. That's a perfect way to force you to learn to touch type, and it will show or reveal those little bad habits that you had, like pressing B with the right hand or pressing Y with the left hand, which in a normal keyboard wouldn't be like a real bad habit, but when you go split, then you notice it because there is no key. The B is here, there's no B there, and the Y.
Okay, so then our recommendation for Dave 2D would be split and touch type, basically. And from there, you're ready to do whatever you want to do.
Exactly.
So the transition will be hard. You will need to put some time on it. But once you've gone through that difficult part, then you will just
you can go further. You can then start, let's try tenting, because you already know how to touch type and you're already on. And going from ortholinear to columnar, that's very, very easy. I think that's not a big difference. But then you can go, tenting, or start using more layers and reduce the number of keys that you use. Or even you can even try a key wheel if you want to try that.
Yeah, and I would say that if for him it was really important that it's small and it's one piece, then I would probably recommend something like the Atreus keyboard or something like this. Something that where the columns are kind of inward a little bit, right? So this way it's more comfortable and you're kind of faking a little bit the split. And maybe it won't be as aesthetically pleasing because it's not a perfect grid.
Yes.
But from a functionality standpoint, it would be better. And that keyboard, if I recall properly, doesn't have a number row either. So the layout will be very similar. So I would have gone for that one.
Yeah, and I think there are some split, so some keyboards are like the Atreus, but they have ortholinear. So they have a bit of a split, and they are slanted, but they keep the ortholinear grid and not the columnar.
Okay, so they're kind of like this.
So split. So they design like a split. It's like if you split this in the half and then you
rotate it a little bit. Okay, understood.
But you don't stagger the columns.
Okay, understood. Okay, so what would we recommend to a regular person that wants to transition?
I would say, while you think about the keyboard you want to buy, start touch typing.
Okay.
I think that's the first step that you can do for free.
Okay. Actually, I would do it different. And the reason behind it is because then if you start touch typing in a regular keyboard,
and then you wouldn't keep this separate brain.
Yeah, and another thing is like in this touch typing mode with ergonomic keyboards, the thumbs are really, really important. And in a regular keyboard, the thumbs are, you can top one, it wouldn't matter, right? So having these two ways of typing, it's actually useful. Yeah, because if not, what will happen is that you will learn how to touch type in your laptop, regular keyboard, wherever, and then you would move into the split keyboard. Then you will learn how to use your thumbs with multiple keys, and then you will go back to a regular keyboard laptop, and then you want to kill yourself because
you want to say
exactly because you don't have those keys, right? So if you maintain these two different ways of typing, then you won't have that issues. Okay, can you only have one way of typing and get used to it? Yes. But having this, let's say, it's not a physical split, but it's like there was a physical split in your mind that uses one skill or another. It's useful in...
Yeah, it's like riding a bike or riding a motorbike. They're similar but different, and you keep that compartment in your brain.
Yeah. Okay, so I think something important would be, okay, why do you want to start this ergonomic journey? And where are you starting this ergonomic journey from? Okay, because it's very different if you're starting, let's say, from one of these Logitech or Microsoft keyboards that are slightly split but have these chiclet switches instead of mechanical keys and so on. Or let's say if you're starting on a laptop, that's quite different too. Or if you're starting on a gaming keyboard that has mechanical switches, that's different too. And okay, why are you doing? What do you want to accomplish? Is it because you have pain in your wrist or in your back, or is it because you don't have any pain? You're just curious about it. Another thing is, how much time are you willing to invest? Because kind of how interested you are relates directly with how much time. I mean, of course, if you don't have work or you don't have things to do, if you have more time, then it will be easier. But understanding your motivations, it's really important, because the journey is not just like, okay, Monday you start, Friday you finish. It's more something that takes time, right? So let's make a scenario. Actually, let's use, for example, you as a case, okay? Where did you start your ergonomic journey, and what was your steps, and And what would you have done different if you were not you and you were recommending to you?
Yes. So I was a touch typist. I was already a proficient typist. So, but I used a Magic Keyboard. It's like a laptop keyboard,
larger.
But larger, and it's on a separate keyboard. That was my everyday keyboard. It had the number pad, the arrows, the F keys, everything. But I knew how to touch type, and I was a fast typist.
Okay.
My job required a lot of typing, and I kind of like got into it. So that was my starting point, and my starting ergonomic keyboard here at Dygma was the Dygma Race, of course. For me, that transition was really fast. I was able to split it and start using a split really fast. For me, that was, okay, this is like a normal keyboard, split in half. And that's how I started using.
Okay, and the key here is that you already knew how to touch type.
Yes.
So that's why it was so easy.
Yes.
Okay, understood.
And I didn't have too many those bad habits of pressing the B and the Y with the opposite hand. I have some bad habits of pressing P and Q with my
ring fingers.
My ring fingers, and my pinky, because my pinky is a bit short and I don't reach.
For me, it's the same.
Yeah. But those I could keep, because it's a normal keyboard.
Yeah.
So then with the Race, I started to explore the thumb keys. I remember a conversation that now I use a lot of times when I explain it to people. It's like, look when you type and look what thumb you use for spacebar, because I would say 90% of people only use one.
Yeah, that's right.
And for me, I press the spacebar with my right hand.
Yeah.
And this one I kept in the air, like weirdly in the air. Yes.
Okay.
So I remember you saying, hey, you are not using the thumb. Give it something to do.
Yes.
And I put backspace on that one because, at that point I might be making a little bit more mistakes. So I put backspace there, and it's been there ever since 3 years ago, So now my thumb key, my left thumb key is for backspace. So, but that's like the approach. Slowly but steadily add little things to your thumb keys. Functions that are usually in the outer columns, like backspace, enter, they're really far away on a normal keyboard right there.
Yeah, so moving backspace makes sense because it's kind of far away. Ideally you should hit it with the pinky, but rarely people do this. They usually hit it with the ring, the middle, or even the index, and they kind of hit it hard, right? And something very important is that every time that you do this, you need to reposition your hand. So you're taking some time to move it around, but at the same time when you reposition, sometimes you place it in the wrong place, and then you have to look, place it, and so on, right? And so it makes sense to move the enter, the backspace, and so on to the thumb keys.
Yeah, now
faster.
Right now, I don't use my pinkies for any of the normal outer keys. Like I moved shift also to the thumb keys, so have shift, backspace, and enter all in the thumb keys.
Okay, and this process of reassigning these modifiers and so on to the thumb keys, how long it took for you since you started with the split and so on?
Moving enter and backspace was super easy, and then also some layers for the arrows, and so the arrows I have them like here. So that was fast because I didn't like the idea of moving my hand to the arrow key, so that was really fast. The only one that took me a little bit more time, because it was kind of like hardwired in my brain, and something that you surprisingly use more than you think, is shift.
Okay.
I hated shift with my pinky. I had to, kind of like move my hand there to the corner, and it really hurt. And so I moved it to my thumb key. The same one as backspace.
Yeah.
If I hold it, is shift.
Okay, so it's a dual function.
It's a dual function key. So if I hold it now, I press, and I will have. Yeah, that will have.
You'll type something.
Yes, I type something.
Yeah.
So that took me like a couple of weeks of actively. I deleted shift from where it should be. That was an empty key. And I forced myself.
And you were still hitting it, I guess.
Yes, I hit it, and they said, okay, no, don't do that. So that was that's usually the trick when I learned the back. But now I have backspace here, but I don't use it. It's just in anyone's need, it's there.
Okay.
But when you learn, I removed the keys that I didn't want to use in the outer columns. I just removed them and put them in the thumb key, kind of forcing you to use them.
Okay, so then your ergonomic journey started by, you were already touch type, so you split it. Then you started moving the easier keys that have a high frequency usage on the right side, the backspace and enter, and then you started moving the modifiers.
Yes.
Okay, and I guess at some point you created more layers, or you added, let's say, I don't know, a numpad or not, or like, how it continued?
Yeah, I think I also moved command to the key that was next to backspace. So that one there on the V5. So that command is usually a bit farther to the left. Command in Mac is just like control on Windows, so it's used a lot. So basically what you said, move the modifiers. My next thing was layers. I already used the layer for navigation, so I kind of like did a little bit more things there. So I had volume up and down. I think I have my at in the A, so it was easier
I do the same thing.
It's easier to reach, and some shortcuts that I use a lot, like screenshot on Mac, which is Shift Command 4. So I put it in one key, export on Photoshop, stuff like small things, like quality of life improvements, but really small, and they're not really high frequency. Well, the at is really used in the softwares that we use because you tag people with that. And then it was, I think the one that it took me more time to learn, but it's the one that I love the most, is my symbols layer. I have a layer where I have my parentheses, so it's this one, I have my parentheses here, brackets, the other brackets, these little things are, like that. I don't know how to call that.
I don't know how to call them either.
But they go in pairs, so everything that goes in pairs are under my index and middle finger, so I can open them and close them really fast and really easily. And I have all the symbols here, so I don't have to reach to the number row for symbols. That was my kind of like third layer. And my fourth layer is the number pad layer. At the beginning, I didn't use that one. I think it's in the default layer of the race and the 5, but I didn't use it. That's something that I learned maybe 2 years in.
Okay. So then maybe it took let's say 6 months on getting used to by 6 months, not of working on it, but actually first you start with the enter, the backspace, then you have the modifiers and so on. So maybe around 6 months or 3 months, or like, how would you put it?
Yeah, I would say for my basic setup, I would say including the modifiers, that would be 6 months.
6 months, okay.
If you don't include the modifiers, it was like maybe a month.
Okay.
Modifiers was the things that took me the most, especially the shift. The command was easier.
Okay, understood. Okay, so it's interesting because you come from this, let's say, laptop keyboard, and you already knew how to touch type. I would say my journey is kind of opposite. I was coming from a mechanical keyboard, and I didn't know how to touch type, and I grew gaming, right? So my typing technique was just like a weird gaming typing technique, where my left hand is 1 unit to the left, because my pinky, I'm gonna be using it for control, shift, and so on, right? And then my right hand would cross completely. So if I'm attaching the keyboard, I would type like this, okay? Because I would use a full-size keyboard, and I would have the mouse. So I'm gaming, I need to be comfortable, so the most important thing is that my left hand is aligned, right? So for me, the first thing is like, I had to learn how to touch type. And that took time. So I'm the kind of person that puts a lot of energy on something when I want to do it. So I was quite obsessive with it, and I would say that I was proficient in a few weeks, but still it was hard to rewire my brain to do it. And eventually I did it, and now I have these 2 typing techniques with a regular keyboard and with a split one. And for me, in my base design of the layers, I already moved the modifiers to the thumb keys, okay? And I already also moved the backspace and enter to different locations, because from my point of view, it was like, okay, let's design this in a way that makes sense. Doesn't matter what's my starting point. So I just rearranged things. So I learned how to do everything at the same time. And for me, nothing was particularly easy or difficult. Everything was as difficult because I was learning how everything...
So you kind of jumped some steps or skipped some steps and bundled them together.
Exactly. I bundled, I think that's a perfect word. I bundled together multiple of these things. And for me, it's like the right enter, I rarely use it. Maybe if I'm scratching my face or something, I need to hit enter. But I have enter and caps lock because you only need to move 1 unit to the left, your pinky. Then I don't use this backspace. I have backspace in my thumb key here. And my main space is this one. I rarely use, I have a second one here. But again, maybe it's if I'm, again, my hand is on the mouse, for example.
Yeah.
So I have my, in this case I'm using Mac, but when I was using Windows, same thing. I have my shift and my control and my alt keys. So control in the case of Mac command, of course. So I have all my modifiers together. And for me, this transition wasn't particularly difficult, and it's so comfortable. I really, really, really enjoy it. And then I was working with the race or using the race for a few years until we had the DeFi. And then I had to do this transition to columnar. And I would say that once you know how to touch type, the transition is not so difficult. In my head, or the weird things that happen to me is like my right hand moves 1 unit to the right. So that's one of the things. And then my Z, X, C, V, those keys are particularly challenging to hit.
Those are the most difficult for columnar. I don't know, maybe it's because the right hand, the way that the keyboard is staggered on a normal staggered keyboard, which is like this, we cheat a lot with the C and the X. You actually press it with your index, not with your middle finger. Many people do that. And when you move to columnar, then you try to do that, and then you find it in the middle. It's not, there's no key there, it's in the middle. So those keys were here, you would cheat and move like that, because you can, the keyboard is slanted that way, and you cheat the opposite way.
And I actually use a DeFi at home and a race in the office. So I'm switching between them constantly. Something that happens right now is that I need 30 seconds or something like this to adjust my brain. So I arrive in the morning to the office, and I've been working at night or doing whatever at night at home. And then it's like, okay, I'm glitching, I'm glitching for 30 seconds, and it's like, click, something clicks in my brain. Okay, I'm free flowing, and everything is easy. So that's something that's happening now. But at the beginning, something that helped me learn how to use the layout of the device, I actually removed these keys in the column. And
because if not, you tend to place it like that, or then you do the set. You move one column left, right on the race.
Exactly. It's like somehow my peripheral vision kind of guides my hands, even though I think I'm not looking at the keyboards. In some kind of way, my hands are guided. And also the position of the thumb cluster is a bit different. So my hands tend to not be in the right place. And also I removed a few keys of the thumb keys, again, to make it a bit simpler. And this made it a bit easier for me. And now I would say I'm proficient in both. It's easy for me. And I have different layers, like the core layers are the same, but I have slight modifications on both keyboards, and I can use them comfortably.
So I think this is interesting. You mentioned the transition to the DeFi, and you mentioned that in your transition from a normal keyboard to the race, you bundled a lot of things at the same time. What was your approach moving from staggered to columnar? Because I've seen two big schools of thought. Okay, like all in, let me just use this keyboard for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, and just go for it. Or I just started using it 1 hour every day, and then 2, and then 5, and then everything. And how long did it take?
So I used the approach of a little bit every day, and the reason behind this is because I cannot afford the productivity drop on...
Well, you can, Dygma can't.
well, then I can't. So for me it was more, okay, let's assign a time block every day to spend a little bit of time on it. If let's say I had a week or something like this, then I would have gone deep, completely focused on it. But the thing is, like, when I'm doing this transition, I'm not only learning the layer, I'm probably doing all the stuff at the same time. Changing some functions or testing some stuff, and testing how comfortable is the thumb keys, because for me it's not only what's best for me. I'm trying to understand what are kind of the limits of what I can do with the keyboard, and I'm always thinking about the customer, what the customer could be experiencing, what kind of issues I could have. Let's say I find a bug or not, or what, and then I'm talking with the team, right? So my approach, maybe it's a little bit different, because I'm thinking of not only what works for me, but actually many more variables. But for me it was like, okay, let's assign a little bit of time every day so I can get used to it. And then is where I remove the keys, I transfer my layers, but I kind of simplified them a little bit. And then slowly through the days, I would say maybe in 3 weeks, spending a little bit of time in the mornings, I was fine, and I was able to work on both keyboards at the same time. And then is when I started more optimizing layers, taking into account different things. So for example, in the columnar layout, for me, it's comfortable to use the numpad, but in the staggered one, it's not. So I haven't used the numpad for years. But now that I have the DeFi, I configured the numpad. In my case, I put it on the left hand because for me it doesn't make any kind of sense that the numpad is on the right hand.
I have it on both.
Okay.
So it depends if I'm using the mouse, I use it here.
Okay.
If I'm not, my brain still goes back to the wires of the normal numpad.
Understood. So how numpads appear in keyboards is like, the keyboard was created. First we had the
Typewriter?
Thank you, the typewriter. But then when keyboards, when let's say early computers had keyboards, at some point they added the numpad. At that point, the mouse didn't exist. So the numpad was added to the right side because most people are right-handed and the mouse didn't exist, right? But if the mouse existed first, I'm pretty sure that the numpad would have been added to the left because the right area would have been already taken used by the mouse, right? So now that I'm relearning again, I don't need to follow that that legacy timeline that happened, right? So I said, okay, let's put it in the left side. I started doing it, and then I thought, okay, this numpad doesn't seem that it's too optimized, at least from my point of view. So I rearranged the keys and I changed the way I use the numpad. And now instead of having 3 rows and 3 columns for the numbers, I have 2 rows with 5 columns.
Okay, so you really went like, okay, what's the most optimal way of using
what's more comfortable? Yeah, because I why would I use 3 fingers when I can use 4 fingers? And also the frequency of some numbers is higher than others. For example, 0, 1, 2, 3 are really high, but 7, 8, like these numbers are less used, right? So then I want to have these numbers in the fingers in the positions that are easier to access, right? So again, I approach it from what's the optimal design, right? And also what's the optimal design for me, because everyone is different, right? And this is one of the good things of programmable keyboards, that you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, for me, for example, since I was already a touch typist, I already knew how to touch type on a...
You were so used
so
to
when
it.
I do that, I actually touch type on it.
Okay. Yeah.
So then for me, it's really kind of like...
Yeah, rewriting your memory is too much of an effort. Yeah, it makes sense. And I didn't have that thing to rewriting that kind of way.
So you can do it from scratch.
Yeah.
So for me, my approach to learning columnar was the same. I couldn't afford to spend the whole day writing very, very slow. So I put some time aside after work, like half an hour, then 1 hour, and then by the 3rd week I was able to work with it. Okay. So I don't want all in. Okay. But for example, Chris, one of our customer support agents, he just decided to go all in. And on a week, during 1 week, he was really slow. Maybe if you took a little bit more time to respond some messages, sorry. And but after that week, he just was ready for columnar. Okay. So it's the two kind of schools of thought, like going all in, kind of like Dave went all in with that layout, and just putting some time aside.
Okay, and now you're only using the DeFi, right?
Mostly. If I switch to a laptop, I can touch type normally, and then with the raise, when I go to the raise, but I don't use the raise normally, just maybe if I'm here in the office and I need to touch something in someone else's computer, it takes me like 10-15 seconds to say, wait, this is staggered.
You're glitching, and then you're...
For me, it happens a lot. It's similar when you go from biking a lot to using the car. Mm-hmm. If I bike a lot, you need to look over your shoulder to see if someone's coming. And then when you go to the car, instead of looking at the mirrors, I tend to turn so I need to say, okay, no, I'm in the car. I need to look at the mirrors. So it's kind of the same thing. Like for a moment, you say, no, this is not a columnar. And then your brain clicks.
And it works.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm aware that you've been changing from QWERTY to Engram, right?
Yes.
So could you talk about this transition? Because talking about this ergonomic journey, part of it is the hardware, the setup, right? But another one is the layout. And there's people that use the Vorak, Colemac,
Holmac,
wherever. There's many layouts. So can you let us know?
Yes.
Why?
Why, God, why?
Why go through that suffering? Okay. And second, where you are at, and if you could, and third, maybe the journey, maybe.
Yes. So I started. I think I'm 3 months in.
3 months in. Okay, interesting.
Yes. And I started putting just a little time aside. Mm-hmm. But the main reason is I want. We have a really weird keyboard that was sent to us that is missing one column.
Okay.
So I wanted to try a layout that had one. The Engram doesn't use the inner columns; it's just for punctuation.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting, and I could learn that to try this weird keyboard.
Yeah, and you consider that the punctuation column, you can have it in another layer?
Yeah, I could have it on a lower layer, and
Okay.
you don't use punctuation really that much.
Okay.
So I said, okay, let's learn this layout on my Defy, and then I will be able to try this keyboard, which is completely weird. And then, so I will be ready to use it. So that was the main reason behind it, and maybe it's a little bit of like, why not? You know, I think I was like I had my layers, my working layers, my thumb keys. I was touch typing proficiently, and I said, okay, well, let's break everything that I do.
Okay, so in your ergonomic journey, you're at the point that you have two options: less physical keys or different layout, basically, no?
Yes.
Okay.
So less physical keys, for example, that's one of the reasons I started using the number pad, so I didn't have to use the number row. And this layout also kind of like reduced the number of keys, at least for the normal touch typing for the alpha keys. You reduce the number of keys because mostly you use just these 4 columns. I think Q and Z are here, but Q and Z in English are very, very
Low frequency.
low
Yeah.
frequency. So that was my reasoning behind it. And my approach was the same as moving to columnar. Put a little bit of time aside until I was enough for working.
Okay.
And so when I reached 40, I decided it was okay for work, which is a little slow.
I remember we were in meetings and you were sharing screen
And he was
you
suffering.
You were typing and I was like, dude, what's going on?
Yes.
Why are you so slow?
I confess that I moved. So that was like 2 months in. One of the problems that I had is like since I'm a touch typist, my brain, when it started picking up speed with Engram, my brain in the middle of touch typing moved QWERTY.
Okay, that's kind of crazy.
And then I started mistyping. So as soon as I sped up, I started mistyping. So I needed to so it's been much more slower than moving from staggered to columnar.
Okay.
That was a walk in the park compared to moving from QWERTY to Engram.
So Engram, okay, this is kind of suffering. No,
Yeah, and I'm still struggling.
Okay.
You know, I was like 70, 80 words per minute comfortably with QWERTY, and if I do a touch typing test with QWERTY where it's only letters, like only words, I could do 90 or 100. Here, 50 something. That's my typing speed now.
Okay.
But no regrets. I think it's much more comfortable.
Okay.
It's called Engram because it has a lot of bigrams and trigrams. So doing TH, which is very used.
Yeah, it's really comfortable how to roll them.
You can roll the keys and it's satisfying. Like U is all these 3 keys and you
Okay,
roll. So
that's
how
nice.
are you? And it's so...
Okay, but I understand that it's designed for English. So for us that we type, I would say half of the time in English, half of the time in Spanish. Then I guess for Spanish it won't.
It's
really
not
be-
that good in Spanish. It's not so terrible.
Okay.
So I had to add the ñ here on the left-right shift because there's no ñ. And in Spanish, Q is
It's
used
quite used. Yeah.
because we have K, which is that and stuff. So Q is used a lot. I'm thinking where to change Q
Okay.
to somewhere else
I have the ñ in a thumb key.
in a thumb key.
Yeah. So maybe you can consider moving one. of them.
I had usually before I had ñ in a layer.
Okay.
So that was my brain was wired to that.
Okay.
But it still needs some improvement. My approach has been okay, master it in English, and then small changes in a layout are not crazy. You know, if I were to swap one key, that's gonna be easy.
Okay.
The problem is that my brain still switches to QWERTY when I go over 50. I switch to QWERTY.
Okay, so you still need time until your brain gets reprogrammed.
Yeah, so I would say learning a new layout is kind of like it's worse than moving to ortholinear.
Okay.
And I would say the benefits are really, really at the end of the ergonomic journey.
Okay.
Yes, it's more comfortable, but
This is interesting because through the years, people have been using Devora, Columnar, whatever in regular keyboards.
yeah, I will say, what's your best ergonomic feature? Split.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't everything else doesn't compare to split. Learning the Dvorak on a normal keyboard, yeah, it can be beneficial, but you know, the struggle is real, you know. So it's so much easier to get used to a split keyboard. Like for me, it was 1 week. compared to 3 months of still struggling.
Okay, understood. Well, it's interesting. So you wouldn't recommend to a regular person to
No.
change the layouts?
I would, for me, at least in my economic journey, a split stagger is the natural first step. Then I would say, I think using layers and all that is a great way, like maximize. You buy this keyboard, maximize it, and use layers, use the thumb keys, move your things to the thumb keys, and try to use all the layers. And then once you are like that, and you say, "Okay, I'm ready. I want something else."
Yes.
You move to columnar with more thumb keys and stuff like that, or even maybe less keys.
Okay, in my way, I would approach it a little bit different, and that's first of all learn touch typing. But because you already knew touch typing, that's why you're skipping it,
Yes.
right? So if you have to learn touch typing, I think it's not that critical that you learn touch typing on staggered or on columnar.
No.
Because you have to relearn everything, right?
So you don't know touch typing, maybe you would recommend going columnar, or maybe it's too much.
It depends exactly. It depends on how much time and effort you want to put. But if you are really committed, then you could do it. But if you're not gonna be learning if you're not gonna learn touch typing, then probably it's gonna be hell.
Yes.
And here in the office, there's people that don't touch type, and they position their hands. They're using the raise, and they position their hands in, I would say, weird ways. But for them, obviously, it's not weird, right? So you could decide to not learn to touch type, but then transitioning from a staggered to columnar is gonna be more difficult.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I would say that learning touch typing, it's like an investment that it's really gonna be paying through your ergonomic journey life. Let's say.
Yeah, touch typing, as you said. Maybe I would say if you know touch typing, moving to this is gonna be very, very easy.
Yeah, in our experience, like interviewing people and testing with people years ago, I remember a guy that typed so fast, I don't know, over 150 words per minute. This guy was working and we had an early prototype. So this was, I don't know, like 2018-ish, 17, yeah, in that range. And we give him the keyboard. He just split the keyboard, did like this, touched it a little bit, did like this, and started typing like a beast. And I was like mind blown, And he could do that because he was a professional touch typer or touch typist, right? But people that use this, let's say, weird gaming typing technique where you're crossing your hand using a few fingers, as at the moment that they split it, they're lost. And one important thing is like gamers and people that don't touch type. Important point. If you touch type, you usually learn how to touch type using these two keys with the bump. I think they're J and K. I would need to type because
yes,
I don't know. It's ingrained in my brain, so I don't even know.
It's J and F and J.
Okay. So you use your index fingers to position your hand, right? But people that game don't do that because they are not using the index to position their hands. Actually, they're using the side of the pinky. This way they know where the whole key is, and sometimes even when they're approaching with the right hand, they touch these keys with the side of the hand, and that's something very weird that we eventually discovered. So as soon as you split it, then the position that your mind expects for the keys, it's not there anymore, and you cannot reposition with the index because you're not used to it. Yeah. So yeah, touch typing.
Touch typing. So maybe circling back to Dave. I think he already did the most difficult thing.
Yes, for sure.
He learned how to type on an ortholinear keyboard, which is
no number row, no legends, and no keys on the right side for the symbols.
Yes.
Low amount of thumb keys. So the combination of everything.
No arrow. So he learned how to use
arrow
layers.
Keys, no F keys. Yeah, exactly.
So he learned how to use layers. He learned how to touch type there. He got used to a weird thumb cluster. So no big space bar. So he did all the things for, yes, a little bit of return, which is using layers or moving his fingers less and moving his fingers in a natural way.
Using layers, it's a big return.
Yes.
Okay, so something very important is that he learned how to use layers, and I think that brings a lot of benefit. But if we are moving from the, let's say, digital to the physical, right? We no split, no column staggered, no extra thumb keys in a position that your thumbs don't collide, right?
Yes,
so yeah, he started his journey in a it's in a difficult place. Like it was a very big jump.
So the good thing about Dave is that now that he's done all that job, he is ready to try something like a columnar stagger, like the Defy with more thumb keys, because the transition is going to be super easy. In fact, I would say he will find it even easier to use because his thumbs are going to rest comfortably and the column stagger is going to feel more natural. So
there will be a little bit of transition, of course, every time that you learn something new, but it's not going to be going through hell.
Yes,
it will
exactly.
maybe less than a week of adjustment.
Yeah, and he's going to get instant rewards for many things that he does, because one of the things I think he struggles is like the reward was so far away.
Yeah.
And with this you get like, oh, I can put something here, and you get little rewards, which is kind of like a nice thing of the ergonomic journey, is to have those little rewards of I learned this new thing, I learned this other thing.
Yeah, and if he's willing to go through the route of the custom keyboard soldering and so on, there's so many options where he can find the perfect layout for him.
Yes,
right?
like maybe, and also the perfect aesthetics that he's looking for.
Yeah, that's true. That for him it was very important with the underglow, the rounded keys, the grid, right? But maybe he can find out that has more of an ergonomic benefit and still is in his standards of aesthetics, right?
Yes, something that fits his setup, or maybe, you know, he explores other, because once you get into the rabbit hole of ergonomic keyboards, there's so many different keyboards, so many aesthetics, and even the same layout, you can make it completely different. You know, say the Korn layout, which is pretty popular and has very few keys. Yeah. I think it's at 42 or 36.
36, 42, yeah.
Yeah, depending on if you choose the outer column or not. So there's many builds that look completely different keyboards with the same layout.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably, I would say, go split.
Okay, well, I think we can wrap it up here. It was an interesting conversation. Hope you enjoyed it too.
Hope you find it interesting too, not only us.
Yes, please let us know if these kind of conversations you would like to hear more of those. And
yes. Hope you like it.
Yeah. So give us feedback, any comments, and thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.